Welcome to Live, Laugh, Launch, the podcast where we take your go-to-market strategy seriously.
But not too seriously. We're your co-hosts. I'm Katie.
And I'm Veronica.
And we're marketing pros who've survived enough launches to know that perfection is a myth and coffee, and sometimes cocktails, are a must.
In this podcast, we talk strategy, share hard-earned lessons, and say the quiet part out loud, whether you asked for it or not.
We'll tackle the good, the bad, and the hilarious of marketing so you can giggle, not gaggle, your way through your next launch.
Because if you're not living, laughing, and launching, are you even marketing?
Let's get into it.
Hey everyone, I'm super excited because today's guest is someone rewriting the rules for product marketers and helping them take back control of their careers. Hattie is the founder of productmarketers.com, a community built for ambitious PMMs who want to become more visible, more valuable, and more in demand, both inside their companies and in the wider industry. And after building out a standout career in product marketing, Hattie realized that being good at your job isn't enough. People have to know that you're good. So she created a space where PMMs can learn how to build internal influence, external credibility, and turn their expertise into a real career security. Her work is already making waves with over 39,000 followers on LinkedIn and a global community of PMMs. This is an amazing journey. So if you're ready to stop being overlooked and start being seen, this conversation is for you. So Hattie, I want to welcome you to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, thank you both for having me.
We're excited.
Awesome. So Hattie, it's great to meet you. Been following you, 39,000 followers is definitely an achievement. So congratulations on that. I'd love to just hear a little bit about how you broke into product marketing. Was it on purpose or an accident? I know for me, it was an accident. So what about you?
Me too.
Yeah, similar to you both, very much an accident. And I feel like I only really learned about the term product marketing maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So taking a step back, I've been in tech for over 10 years now. I started off as a CEO of my own company. So I built the first e-commerce platform for basically brands that were within the feminist and body positive space. So we very much had like a firm niche, a firm positioning on that one. So I had that business for 6.5 years before I exited. And then that's when, through the announcement of my exit on Twitter, actually, was when the CEO of a Finland-based software company reached out and said, hey, we need a CMO. We need someone scrappy like you. So I was like, okay, I'm hireable. So then I worked for a Finland-based company as the CMO. And then I learned about product marketing and realized, everything that I love to do and everything that's within my wheelhouse and my superpower is product marketing. So then I like to call myself the Benjamin Button of the career world, where I've niched down later in life. So then now I've become like a product marketing manager. And my last role was at an American firm, and I was there for a few years. And that was like private equity backed. It was really, really awesome experience working for an American firm. And now going out on my own with productmarketers.com.
Can you share more about that and why you decided to help others stay ahead in their careers? Why you wanted to help people like us?
Yeah, for sure. Great question, because a year ago, I felt really secure in my role, Veronica. I felt so secure. Everything was great. And then layoffs started happening. And I saw some of my best friends, the best colleagues that I was working with being laid off. And I survived 5 rounds of layoffs, right? So there were a few people let go. And I was like, holy crap. Like, I need to make sure that I secure my own career as a woman who, I live on my own. I don't have a partner. I don't have rich parents. I was like, how do I secure my career, especially with product marketing, where a lot of organizations have cut PMMs in their first round of layoffs because they just don't understand what it is we do, right? So I was looking online for a place that I could have these really honest, really tough conversations, and I really couldn't. Because, I didn't want to have these open conversations on LinkedIn where my employer would see. I didn't want to have it in like Reddit forums where I wouldn't actually be able to connect with people and that everyone's anonymous. So I realized actually I need to create the space. So that's when I started really building up meetups in London. So I actually threw free meetups for us PMMs to get together to have these honest conversations in real life, because obviously they're not recorded. Like, we can have really candid conversations. And then that's when I realized, I would love it if I can have global, worldwide conversations like these, which are super honest, super frank, super like no BS, and really, really actually useful for me in my career, but online. So that's when I started to think I need to build out productmarketers.com and build this for all of us PMMs so we can actually have a space to not only figure out how do we stand out on LinkedIn outside of our current organization that we work at, which might be chaotic, which might be toxic, which might be full of like all of this crap, whilst also how do we build up our internal authority where we work so we still have a job, right? We still have a salary, still pay the mortgage. So that's when I was like, I need to create the space that I wish I had a year ago.
Yeah, I love that. And I especially love that you mentioned the awkwardness of LinkedIn. I think about that often, how, I've wanted to apply for things in the past. Someone's posted about a new job and I'm like, crap, I can't. I guess I'll direct message them. I won't comment on this post because my employer might see it, or I can't, go pro or something else because my employer might see it. So that definitely resonates with me for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I like the way you described it. You're so passionate but you built a community that's more like a family where we can feel safe, a safe space. And I totally love the way you described that to us. You talk about PMM excellence. Can you tell us a little bit more about what PMM excellence means?
Yeah. So one thing I realized through all of these conversations I was having with PMMs on a weekly basis, whether at the meetups or online on LinkedIn in my DMs, I was speaking to 50 to 100 PMMs a week. And it's actually quite an average week to me. Yeah, it's quite wild. That's why I can get like 60 PMMs in a room in a meetup that I throw. And people are like, whoa, this is a lot of PMMs. And I'm like, this is like such a small subset of the people I speak on a monthly basis. So I'm like, it makes sense. But what I realized was the PMMs who are actually really, really killing it in their career, they have no place to share what they're learning and to share how they're actually doing it and the actuality of it outside of the theory that we can easily find on Google, right? We can find the frameworks, we can find the theory, we can find the high level conversations. But this is why it's important to have like a podcast like yours, for example, and also like a place that we can have to share what excellence is. So for me, PMM excellence is how are PMMs actually doing it in their real job? How are they actually implementing not only the theory and the frameworks, but how are they navigating the politics? What is their day-to-day like? What is their week-to-week like? And really getting down to a brass tacks of that. So for example, the last meetup that I threw here in London had senior PMMs from Amazon, Meta, and Miro all on the panel that I was hosting. And basically we were speaking about salary. We were speaking about how hard is it actually? We were speaking about everything that came down to them actually executing on their role, but also what they've learned has really helped them stay within their role. So they're secure from tech layoffs, but also they're promoted and seen as a person who's driving ROI. So PMM excellence to me is having these really frank, really honest conversations. And that's why I've like revolved it around not only all of my content, but the community as well, because I think we don't have a space to actually share what we're actually doing outside of all of the theory that's online, if that makes sense.
No, that's awesome. It's excellent. You made a perfect point. And I was on your website this past week and there's something that stood out to me. It said something about like, am I doing this right as a PMM all the time? Because every launch is different. Every release is different. Every organization is different. And half the time I like to say in this role, you're scratching your head like, I've never done this before. Okay, let's do it, right? And then you're wondering, am I doing this right? I got the framework down. That's the easy part, the framework, the map, but the in-betweens and then the thereafter, did I do this right? And you're constantly questioning yourself in this position. So I love that you put this community together to form this excellence. I mean, you're brilliant. I just have to say that.
Yes, for sure. I'd love to hear about what folks typically reach out about. Is there like a common thread or a few common threads that people ask you?
Ooh, so I get dished the dirt basically. So, which is awesome. The hot tea. And I think it's awesome because it's like, I actually have cultivated a space that I'm like, I'm encouraging it, right? So the conversations that come up time and time again is the imposter syndrome. It was the case that people will jump into a new organization and be like, I've either never done this before or I have. However, it's completely different. And here's the thing, because we work with so many different stakeholders, especially people who've worked with PMMs in the past, they think they can tell us, hey, that's not right. That's not how product marketing is because I worked with a PMM once before and they didn't do it that way. You should do this. Or maybe they'll even take the mick a little bit and say, well, actually, you should be producing our, I don't know, slide decks, or you should be writing our release notes when
One pagers.
yeah, right. And it's one pages. And it's like, well, and they will throw the whole like, it's because I've worked with a PMM before who's done that. So then it kind of makes us question, like, are we doing it right? Are we doing a good job? And because we work with so many different stakeholders, and if you're at a large organization, a big tech organization, you may be working with 40 PMs, for example. Like I know PMMs who are working with 40 PMs and they only have 3 PMMs to work with 40 of them. Can you imagine? So the questions that come up time and time again are all around, how do I overcome the imposter syndrome? How do I know I'm doing it right? Also, I recognize that now my manager is so ROI focused, so revenue focused. How do I prove this? How do I make sure that my seat at the table is very, very clear to everyone involved? And therefore, they are not thinking about moving me under a different role. What's widespread, and I had a post go viral recently, which was basically their managers are protecting them and their careers by moving them under more revenue focused roles. So for example, and removing the product marketing titles. So they're moving them under solutions marketing, partner marketing. They're moving them under even growth marketing and demand gen. It's fucking shocking to me.
Wow.
But they're doing that because they're trying to protect their PMMs by saying, actually, the manager doesn't have a good enough argument to prove, or they're getting pushback from the executives or the private equity firm who are saying, what does PMM do? Like, what's their ROI? Prove it to us in terms of data, in terms of numbers, in terms of like a statistic and an Excel spreadsheet that we can prove to our board and our like higher ups. And because they don't have the answer, because we are sometimes indirectly helping, and I like to say we are the quarterback, you know, it's funny to me, like, obviously I'm British, but in America, and I don't have to mansplain like American culture to you guys, but the fact that you have the quarterback in a team and they are like everyone's like, yeah, we love the quarterback. They're amazing. Tom Brady is awesome, blah, blah, blah. Aaron Rodgers, yeah. And then no one really cares about the person who's actually scoring the goal, but it's the quarterback who's like, that is the person who's passing the ball for the other person to score. And I feel like we are the PMM and we are the quarterback. We are the person who's like scoring by actually allowing others to do that. And we pass the ball and then they score. So it's a really tough one. And these are the conversations that are coming up, especially with the market right now and the pressure, the sheer amount of pressure that a lot of teams have to deliver, especially in the wake of like AI, doing more with less. It's a real mess. But here's the funny thing. It is across the board. Like apart from, for example, Brazil, for some reason, PMMs in Brazil who I've been speaking to, they say product marketing is hot shit right now. Like everyone is trying to get into product marketing. That's a job title that everyone is clamoring for. Organizations are actually desperate for PMMs. The US and UK and Canada primarily, we are seeing a shift in doing more with less, and PMMs are now having to fight for seats at the table. And we are asked to be proven as to what ROI we generate on a monthly, quarterly, or even annual basis.
Mm-hmm. That
Yeah.
makes a lot of, that's amazing.
So hard.
And that's so weird about Brazil, right? I would never have guessed that.
Yeah, would I honestly, but it just comes up in conversations, and these are the conversations that I have with PMMs either in the community or on LinkedIn, and it's just fascinating how different it is across so many different countries. So I feel like there is demand there because a lot of organizations, especially US ones, are now investing within the EMEA. So they are actually hiring and building out teams and functions within Portugal, within Spain, within Brazil, where they can actually capture the market of like generating a tech scene within these countries, but also they can capture great talent at a low salary. And this is the shift that's happening amongst the US organizations that I'm seeing. And I have a lot lot of members in my community who are actually going through this right now, where they are based in EMEA, but they're being hired by US companies for a lower salary. So I think that's why Brazil, for example, is really taking off. And I feel like it will be a shifting point where they will start to really invest in tech. And I feel like that also adds to it. So it's like a macro economic sort of shift as well.
That makes a lot of sense. And so right now we're seeing a shift and we're seeing a lot of things changing in the economy and organizations are doing layoffs like you mentioned, but there is still a demand for PMMs if we're quarterbacks, right? What skills do you think the next generation of PMMs need that maybe weren't critical 5 years ago, or maybe you mentioned AI as well? What we'll need from them in the future? What does that next generation look like?
The next generation, to me, in my opinion, looks like investing heavily in the soft skills. And I know it sounds cliche, but I think this is going to be the differentiator between the excellent and the kind of mediocre. Where the excellent, they really invest in the ability to communicate, to be concise, to actually learn how to be productive, because productivity itself is a skill. But I think managing people is a key one, because being able to manage people and build up your authority internally is really, really key. And I learned this also personally through the American firm that I worked at recently, where half the stuff was like how I was doing the work, but half the other time was how I was actually presenting the work that I was doing to internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. And that's going to be key, because here's the thing. If AI is going to be used for us to speed up the amount of collateral, to speed up the amount of like executional tactical work that we're producing, then it means that as a person, we need to heavily invest in our soft skills that will allow us to be able to stand out when AI is actually doing, I guess, the grunt work. We need to make sure that we are doing more of the high level managing sort of work, even though we might not have like the managing seniority. So for me, when I've looked at even the best CMOs, the best CEOs, they have the soft skills down to a T. Like you can put them up on the stage and they're charismatic and they learn how to be funny. Like even the element of humor is a key one. So for example, in my downtime, and I always push PMMs to do this, is to take up improv comedy lessons in your spare time. Because for me, what it's done is it's allowed me to practice the skill of speaking and also being funny at the drop of a hat and being able to think off the top of my dome. So I don't even have to really have that pressure before I'm thinking, but I always have a response. So whenever a private equity firm member came to me, was like, Hattie, where are we at with like, what's the LTV on this customer? And like, what's their ICP? Like, explain the persona. Who are they? Like, where are they based, etc. Before I would sweat, I would shake. I'd be like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? Like, this is toxic. Blah, blah, blah. And then once I started to learn those skill sets and I was practicing and getting the reps in on my downtime with improv comedy, which it kind of simulates the same feeling where it's like, oh my God, I'm performing in front of people. This is scary. What do I do? What do I say? I'm just making up jokes on the fly. It allowed me to then take those skills and implement it into my day job and also my personal life. So I feel like I can always reply at the drop of a hat, but also I don't have that internal pressure where I'm stressing myself out at the exact same time. So I think a lot of PMMs, they face this issue where they come to me and they're like, Hattie, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I've taken all the fucking courses. I've like learned everything in the books. I've read every book. I've done everything. Like I've consumed your content and yet no one respects me. And yet when I ask for a promotion, everyone's saying no. Like, what do I do? And I'm like, this is where, unfortunately, you need to work on you, my dude. Like you need to take the time to look at you, to audit you honestly and say, okay, what is it that they are not respecting right now? Is it your level of cadence and how you communicate? Is it the fact that you don't have boundaries? Is it the fact that you're not assertive? And I know it's tough. Like I understand it. I'm not perfect. I was like a complete introvert for the majority of my life. I hated speaking. I would freak out. I would have panic attacks whenever I did like a school presentation. Like I was that woman, right? So for me to tell other people to do that, I'm like, I've been there. So I'm not saying this out of like thin air. I've done this work on myself and I've seen the results. And sometimes it takes that brutal look to be like, where am I lacking right now that I can plug the gaps and fill it and make sure that I become the best version of myself in the process that any organization would kill to have? Because it might not be your lack of knowledge on product marketing. It might be the fact that people don't respect you because maybe you don't have the boundaries or the assertiveness, or your communication skills could be improved upon. And it might be as simple as that, but it takes a bit of thought and time and sort of like self-care, reflectiveness, but also self-compassion to be like, yeah, I can improve that. So let me see this as an adventure. Let me improve on that. But I feel like that is the major skill. If anyone's really thinking about how do I protect myself against all of these macro shifts on like AI and like, organizations cutting back, etc., I would lean in heavy into the soft skill side.
Yeah, I agree with all of that for sure. I say if a marketer can't market themselves, then I don't trust them to market a product. And I myself have a theater background, so I love that you have done improv. I think that's an amazing recommendation for folks as well.
Note to self, I'm going to join the next improv class.
Yeah.
I would love to see that, Veronica.
I'm going to. I have so much on my task list for myself going forward. So that's going to be on there.
Love that.
Now, we talked about like the future PMMs, but what advice would you give someone aspiring to become a PMM today?
Don't do it. No, I'm joking.
Be prepared.
Be prepared. Yeah. No, I think firstly, awesome. Like, welcome to the best group of people and the best job title, especially within tech. And if you are thinking of breaking in, there's two ways that I've seen have been super successful. The first way has been either you join a tech company in a different field. So for example, you join as a salesperson or a customer support person, and then you learn the ropes of product marketing whilst you're there, and you learn from the other PMMs within that organization, and then you transfer into that role. This is exceptionally awesome if you work in big tech because they're more likely to have a lot of job openings. So then you can actually be like fast tracked because you're part of the organization and therefore you're seen as more likely to be hired, right? Because you understand the ICP, you understand the people, etc. The second way is if you go cold, but if you go cold from industry to industry. So for example, if you've worked at a completely different role and for example, you were a salesperson within a fintech firm. Now, if you want to jump into another fintech firm as a PMM, it's more likely that you would be hired because it's just a jump from one industry to the other. So that has been super successful for people as well. So then that way you're able to learn about product marketing in your downtime, whether it be through YouTube, the books, courses, whatever, but then you use your knowledge around the customer and you use that as your source of leverage. And here's the thing where I've really coached people on how to do this as well is you have to lean into what has led you to the success in your current role. So for example, if you're a salesperson at a fintech firm, you need to hit the points that are relevant to product marketing, which is you speak to customers. Maybe you produce battle cards. Maybe you're thinking about, conducting win-loss interviews with those customers. Maybe you're thinking about onboarding and what are the aha moments that you would like to highlight to them. These are principles within product marketing that allows us to be the voice of the customer. But these are the things that you should highlight if you're really considering breaking in. And product marketing is really awesome. Like I highly recommend everyone breaks into product marketing if you're really considering it, because I rarely ever come across a PMM who's really like an asshole. Like everyone's really sweet and really kind. So best of luck if you're considering it.
It's really hard right now to make a switch for sure. I've been recommending very similar things to folks when they reach out to me. I came from content for many years. Veronica came from sales enablement. So we both internally transitioned. But for the folks who are doing it cold, I think the sales recommendation is very interesting. I haven't heard anyone else say that on this podcast or to me specifically. That's the first time I've heard.
But it makes sense.
Sales. Right? Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Because they are making those battle cards. They are speaking to the customer. They can be that voice of the customer because they're in their shoes solving their pain points. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Organizations will always hire the person who understands the customer the best. So it's also an exceptional point where I see within like PMM excellence is retaining as much information about the customer in your head, more than you put down in terms of like the actual documentation within the organization. And I'll explain what I mean if that sounds complex. So one thing that I always did was I always thought, what are the friction points that I can create that will make a company think twice about letting me go? And the main thing that came up time and time again with not only me, but the exceptional PMs that I worked with and exceptional CS, exceptional sales was, if you understand the customer better than your managers, let's say if you retain 100% in your head, but you put down maybe 60 to 70% in terms of like knowledge-based articles and internal documents, then they're going to question whether to let you go, right? Because they're like, we need to get rid of the person who understands the customer the most. And now we will have to get in someone else who may be cheaper and they don't understand our customer as much as Hattie does. When it comes to building out the product and all of this, they really have to think twice because it might take them longer. It might be more expensive because they're doing all of the legwork and the research again. And I've taken a lot of my intel with me when they boot me out. So it's the same thing for when you're trying to break in or when you're trying to get hired, is if you can leverage the fact that you are showing in a very concise and clear way that you understand the customer even better than they do, or maybe you're making assumptions on the basis of hypotheses from their website and from their content that you've been consuming, but also from your, let's say, 10 years within fintech, within sales enablement, within content at different organizations within the same industry, then you can tap into that. And that is called leverage, my friend. And anything that you can leverage within your career, you should 100% use it.
What advice do you have for folks who are dealing with a situation where they have a hard time getting in front of customers? This has happened to me in a couple of organizations. My boss has said to me, that's not what product marketing does. Product marketing doesn't need to talk to, which is why I left. But it's a common thing. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the amount of times I've heard this is either like, yeah, bosses telling us or managers telling us that we shouldn't be speaking to customers, we should stay away, or like salespeople and CS people holding on to their customers for dear life and be like, no, you can't speak to my accounts. Like, go speak to someone else's, right? So even though we ask them, hey, can you set me up with an interview? They're like, no, stay off my customers. It is really, really, really tough. And the one thing that I've seen that has created cut through for not only me in my career, but also the clients that I've coached through this is learning, like, firstly, tipping over the first big domino. It's like a concept that I teach within my community. It's like tip over the first big domino, which is let's get to the root cause of it. Okay. So like if we want to get more customer interviews, what is the root cause? Is it because Jake in sales doesn't want to share his customers with us? Why is that? Has he been burnt in the past? Has something happened to him where he was trusting and then something happened and now he is no longer trusting? Or maybe something is up. Maybe he doesn't even like me. That could be a thing. Maybe he thinks I'm pompous and I'm in marketing and I do nothing, right? Whilst he's trying to make calls. That's a potential. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, let's get to the root cause of it first and address it. So I like to have these in like forms of debate. Now, here's the thing. If I was debating and I've had a micromanager who was fucking terrible, I hate that man. Like, I rarely hate anyone, but that man I hate.
Feel that.
Yeah, I feel like we all feel that. Like one manager, this guy, my God. So even with him, even if I debated him and tried to get to the crux of it, he was just like, don't speak to customers, stay away. He really undermined me. He basically thought I would fuck up any sort of interview that I would do with them or like, you know, be seen as an amateur. He basically thought I was an amateur in every way when I was not. I was fucking CMO before that role. Anyway, with him, it was a really, really tough one. And in these scenarios where you are being blocked from speaking to a customer or any project. So for example, if you're being blocked by doing messaging or being blocked by doing positioning, it's a real tough one to try and break through. And this is why a lot of my friends just quit their jobs and find a new one. And that's obviously a solution. And it makes sense. If your mental health is being impacted by it or your career is being stalled by it, then consider it. And especially by PMMs who are like, oh my God, not only have they blocked me on a specific project, but now I'm being moved to a completely different job title, which takes my career in a completely different direction. It might be worth considering moving and finding somewhere else. However, I have, and I don't think this works all the time, but I did speak to the VP of marketing who was above him about what was happening and trying to get her buy-in. And I think I learned the hard way that just doesn't work. Because even with this guy who was my manager, I think if anything, he made my life fucking worse because I was like trying to schmooze the people above him. Luckily, he left, and then my career just skyrocketed in this company. It was absolutely bizarre, but it just proved to me that, can you believe that it just takes one person within an organization who tells us no, and our career is either stalled or the projects are less successful. Because in product marketing, it's like, you both know, we have to work with so many different people at so many different stages of either a launch or positioning or messaging review or whatever the case may be. And we need everyone bought in. Like, we actually do. We need everyone on our team and on our side and feeling like they will be a winner because of this project. Now, if someone isn't bought in, it can actually significantly impact the success of a product marketing project, especially if we lead it. And that's the wild thing. This is why I'm such a big fan and advocate of figuring out the soft skills and figuring out how to work on the authority building. Because even if you know all the stuff, it could just take one person to say, no, you're not going to speak to customers. And then it's like, well, what? Like, how do I figure out what to build or how to like help the PM team? And like, where do I go? Do I like put it into Chat GPT and guess? Like, what is happening right now? And then it completely derails the results. And then the higher ups see it as like, oh, well, that was a flop. That go to market didn't land. And then it's like, well, what is product marketing doing anyway? And it's just like, this is why organizations that have really good culture, for example, well, I won't name any examples just in case they don't. And any PMMs are like, no, the culture is crap. But I feel like the culture that I've had in my career that was the best had debates. And this was something that a VP of product really installed into both the product team and the marketing team. And obviously I worked across both as PMM. And he came from an Amazon background. And in Amazon, when he had worked there in the early stage of Amazon, they would basically debate everything. And there was no seniority. So basically the most senior people in the room. So if Jeff Bezos was in the room, and he actually was with him, he would speak last in the meeting. What they would do is they would have the most junior people speak first, because basically they don't want people's opinions swayed by someone who's higher up. To be like, because, right? I love it. Because just because they're higher up does not mean they're correct. And also the fact that they're higher up sometimes convinces us who are on the ground, who are maybe a little bit more junior or mid-level, to be like, oh, maybe they're right because, you know, they're senior and like they're respected. And like this Jeff Bezos, like, of course, like now my opinion is swayed. When what he used to do was he was like, lay it all out on the table. Tell me everything, like everyone share their opinion. And then I go last. And I think it's that sort of ethos that really helps, because if you don't have a culture of debate or a culture of openness, it is really tough to go against the people who are telling us no, and shutting it down and creating that environment. And then that is when it is more important than ever to build up the soft skills of how to communicate, how to have authority, how to be assertive, but also how to create really good friendships and connections. So one thing that I learned through my manager, who she's a absolute angel, what she used to do was, when she ever wanted something big created, like a new project or a new investment into product marketing or some complete shift that she knew that the CEO was going to really dig into and be like, I don't know, what she would do is she would get buy-in from the heads of like the departments and the people that he would respect. So then when she would mention it on a call, and when they have like their exec call, like weekly call, that the other people would chime in and say, hey, like I do agree with her. Like that is like spot on. I feel like we should move in that direction. So then that way it kind of lessens the blow as like a shock to the CEO or the person you're trying to get buy-in from. And you've actually got an advocate, like you have advocates for your idea ahead of time. So it's about figuring out who are on your team first, where are the gaps that maybe people don't respect you or don't want to work with you or whatever, and how you can improve those, and then go from there.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, this is all great. Like, I'm like sitting here like, wow, you're speaking my language. And you've given so much great advice and just a wealth of knowledge. What is the worst career advice you've seen as a PMM?
Seen or received?
I think the worst career advice that I've ever been given is do good work and good things will happen. Yeah, 10 years ago, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, even like 6 years ago, if you wanted to find a new job, you could land a new one within a month, like easy, or a month or two, like so easy. Now it's a case of if you do not speak up for yourself and show the work you're working on, and especially if you work remotely, because I have worked remotely for basically my entire career. I've not even had hybrid roles apart from like, you know, offsites and things like that because I worked at a Finland-based company, American-based company, and I had my own. I feel like in remote, you have to not only do the work, but you have to show it, whether that's in Slack, whether that's in weekly updates, whether that's in your, you know, stand up for the day. Like just showing your work is as important, if not more important, than actually doing the work. And being able to do both, being strategic and tactical, is a killer thing. And being reliant on just being like, oh, I can do good work and that's that, is not enough. I had a client come in and she's brand new to America. She moved from India, working at an American firm. And she is very used to just do and clock off at the end of the day. That's a very like Indian sort of culture that she was telling me about. And she was like, in America, this is so different where I am not being considered ever in anything right now. And she's like, I'm doing my best work, but I do not feel its impact whatsoever. And I'm like, it's because you're playing in a completely different game. It's like you're using the game of chess in a game of Monopoly. It makes no sense. You have to figure out what is the game that is being played internally where you work, and therefore, how do you then adapt to that game and play the rules of that game? Because in some organizations, it is about being the yapper. Some people who just talk a good game, like stay and get promoted and they are never laid off. And it's like,
Yes, I've noticed that.
right.
Do you have to turn into that person?
Right, exactly. It's like, do I have to become that person or like what is happening right now? So I feel like that was always the worst piece of advice. And I feel like what's even worse is I think some people are still sharing that piece of advice in, you know, this year. It makes no sense to me. None.
So you got to show your work. You got to be strategic. You got to come in. I hate to use the word because there are some that come in like guns blazing, and that's a bit too much. So you don't want to come in guns blazing, right?
Yeah.
You definitely want to be assertive, and you want to show that you are capable and show your worth ahead of time, not just like, here's my good work. Okay, I'm clocking out. That makes a lot of sense. So if you want that type of job, I highly suggest you work at, Starbucks or something, because that's not what a PMM does. So I want to talk more about the community, going back to the community that you've built in London. I'm so excited for you and everything that you've accomplished. I don't have a PMM community here in my local area. I've researched and looked. I don't know about you, Katie, but here it's not strong. And so how do you suggest we build a strong PMM community in our local areas?
Where are you both based?
I'm in Orlando, Florida.
And I'm in New Orleans. I'm part of a Tech Connect group, but there aren't very many product marketers. We're all remote if we do exist.
I have a Tech Connect group, but it's not really product marketing or marketing really in general.
Wish I was still in London. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, so I say we move.
Yeah, just move to London. I think that's the solution. Yeah, it's a real interesting one. And this is why I've had to actively set up the meetups, right? So I throw my own meetups now across the world, not only in London, but in different cities with the help of other PMMs who get paid to throw meetups on behalf of productmarketers.com, right? So if anyone's listening and wants to become an ambassador, let me know. But it's a really tricky one because firstly, I feel like we're so underserved. And, there, like you both mentioned, there are tech meetups where are generalized. They do not have our nuanced problems because they are so siloed and they are basically just doing the work. And we have to work across so many different teams that it's just not even comparative. So the fact that you both have your own podcast and are reaching out, and I know you're active on LinkedIn as well, I feel like you're doing probably the 1% of the 1% in terms of us as PMMs. Like us as PMMs, I feel like we are very It's very sweet of us, but I feel like we are very, very like silent and we don't actively put ourselves out there. We have the imposter syndrome holding us back. So the fact that you both have a podcast for me is creating like an amazing community online. And even if people aren't within your local area or wanting to like meet up or like have that, honestly, I feel like you're doing better for the world for having an online presence. Now, if you obviously wanted to do the in real life piece, the one thing that I always hold dear as like the central piece to every meetup that I ever throw, and this is why I get 60 PMMs and upwards in a room at any one time, is I always make it authentic. I think there are some PMM events out here, like the PMA, for example. They're great, but I feel like it feels too much. It feels too corporate for me anyway. And it feels like it's just not really grassroots anymore. I feel like they're just too big for me right now. Like, yeah, I just feel like it's
gone beyond product marketing too. They have so many different groups, right?
Right, exactly. So I'm just like, well, we're only one of like your 25 groups. Like how much time and effort is actually going into us? Like I have these questions as a PMM, as a consumer, and I don't know. I always felt like just a number, like a number in the sort of like spreadsheet. So for me, what I do is I make sure that my meetups are always revolved around humans and feeling grassroots and feeling like we have a sense of camaraderie, that we can have the really tough discussions that my sponsors don't care about. You know, like my sponsors are like, have the tough discussions, like, you know, be honest, swear, like be yourself. Like we are here for you. Like we respect you. We want you to be real. Right. So I feel like if anyone was to think about building up your own community, obviously I'm here to help, but if you want to do it on your own, I would say like have a sense of purpose around it. Like what do you want to achieve out of it? What do you want your attendees or your community to achieve out of it? I know that one lady, she's based out in Romania. She does like, she will sometimes have people show up to like rock nights. So they'll go to a gig and like they're all PMMs, but they're just friends, right? So having friendship and actual real communication and real like connection at the heart of it, I feel like that's like the major thing. I think that's what would attract me anyway.
I think that's awesome. Great. Thanks for that. So we're on the right track, Katie. I definitely still think we need to go visit her in London though. We'll have to put that.
Is down to return.
Yes. Knowing what you know now, would you recommend other PMMs to branch out on their own as consultants? Why or why not?
I don't think it's for everyone, because it is running a business at the exact same time as doing the work, which is a lot. I know a few people, and I've spoken to actually just earlier this week, a couple PMMs who are based in the Bay Area who are now becoming consultants and also building out their own podcast and doing their own thing. And they're like, I would love to do this full time, but my lord, like it's expensive to live in the Bay Area with 2 kids and like a husband and all that. So I think the one thing that people and the PMMs that I've spoken to who have reached out to me and I've coached them on how to build their personal brand, especially on LinkedIn to attract usually B2B early stage startups or mid stage as well, is you have to spend a lot more time on actually doing the marketing as opposed to doing the work. And I think a lot of PMMs quit their day job and become consultants in order because they want to do the work. They want to like throw themselves into it, right? They want to just like revel in like whatever project a company wants. What they're shocked with is the amount of work that needs to go into the marketing, and you need to have that always on. And you need to produce way more content than you could ever imagine in order to get just one customer. And even that one customer might be at a reduced rate, at a discount. They might be asking for the world. They might be a pain in the neck, but at least you get one for a testimonial or whatever the case may be. So I think once you get the shift right of spending, let's say, I would actually say 70% on marketing and 30% on actually delivering, then you're onto a winner. Then you have like a real chance of being highly profitable. And this is me speaking to a lot of my friends who have generated significant amount of money. So for example, the Fletch PMM guys I've had in the productmarketers.com community, and they make, I think they're around like 1.2 to 1.5. They do this purely by posting on LinkedIn, and they were in-house PMMs and they went to the consultant route. However, they were validating what they should focus on as consultants whilst they were employed. And I feel like that's probably the best way to go because it allows you to really test the market and see what's up. So for example, that's what I did with my community. When I was still employed, before I had quit my job, I built out a wait list to see the demand for my community. And I had 1,400 PMMs sign up on that wait list. And that was enough for me to be like, okay, I'm going to quit my job and see this out and put my all into it and make this work. And luckily it worked, but luckily is the key word because I produced the wait list. Yeah. So in some ways, I would absolutely love it if everyone could own their own company, do their own thing, have that flexibility, have that freedom. I know that it's not for everyone because a lot of people do have family, they want healthcare, they want their benefits covered. You know, it is like a big shift to go from self-employed to consultant. However, there is a third option where you can do both. So I know one guy called Jeff Su. He is a PMM at Google, and on the side of his Google job where he's been for, I think, 6 years, he's a director of PMM based out in San Fran. He also has a YouTube channel that is not product marketing related, but it's all about productivity, AI, using Google tools as well because he works at Google, and basically working with like productivity as a topic. Now on his YouTube channel, he has over 1 million followers, and I don't think he's actually going to quit his day job. Now, I've tried to speak to this guy. He just will not respond to me, which is wild. But Jeff, like, come speak to me. I'm not that scary, I swear.
Right.
Yeah, what I find fascinating when I'm trying to break it down, because I love to break down like the success of people. If I'm going to guess, he's probably on like 400 to 500K as a salary. Because that's not uncommon, because I've had Sora Lee in my community speak, and she worked at TikTok in the same job description, and she was on 400K. And he has the additional income of YouTube revenue, his ad sponsors, all of that. So I think he sees it as a two-pronged play. So in some ways, you could also do that, which is like if you want your consultancy to just be additional income, then you could do that too. There's no rules to the game. Just make sure that your employer has no idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. I really want to encourage those listeners to take a look at productmarketers.com. I think I'm going to join, get a membership myself. There's so much to learn from you, Hattie. Even if you just want to start the self-paced membership, even if you unfortunately have been laid off and you're looking for a position and you're feeling like you're losing your skills in these few months that it's taken you, get onto one of these memberships, get the coaching. Stay active. There's so much that you have to offer, Hattie, and I just want to thank you so much for creating productmarketers.com, creating just this community of individuals and keeping us sane. That's what I like, because, you know, when we log off at the end of the day and we're wondering and we're scratching our head like, did I make a difference? Did I do this right? There are people like you that encourage us to keep going, and I want to thank you for that.
Yes, thank you so much. Really loved having you on the show.
No, thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed this.
Yeah, it's been great. And we look forward to meeting you. We'll probably make a trip out there to London. We have an excuse now.
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.